Look at the cake, babies.
Happy birthday, Maid! Good heavens. Where did all these babies come from?
Happy birthday, little ones.
Wow, happy birthday.
The social worker's pen hovered over the form, one signature away from taking my children forever, when a woman I'd hired just 2 weeks ago said 5 words that made the entire courtroom go silent. My name is Matthew Vincent, and I need to tell you about the day I almost lost everything that mattered. Not my money, not my company, my 3 bobbies. See, 48 hours before that courtroom moment, I had it all figured out. A penthouse in Los Angeles with ocean views that people pay just to photograph. A tech empire worth $3 billion that I built from nothing. And 3 perfect 2-year-old children who made my heart explode every time they smiled. Then my ex-wife Laura walked back into my life with a lawyer, a fake smile, and a plan to destroy me. She wanted the kids, not because she loved them. She abandoned us when they were 3 months old, said motherhood made her feel like she was drowning. But now that my face was on magazine covers and my bank account had more zeros than most people could count, suddenly she remembered she had children. The custody hearing destroyed me. Laura's lawyer made me look like a ghost in my own home. They had photos of me at business dinners while nannies fed my kids, emails I sent at 3 in the morning, security camera footage showing me working while someone else tucked Vera, Kenny, and Imelda into bed. Every single piece of evidence screamed the same thing. I was a stranger who happened to live in the same house as my children. The judge's words still burn in my memory. Temporary custody to Laura. 2 weeks to prove I could be a real father, or I'd lose them permanently. My lawyer said I needed help fast. Someone who could show the court that my home wasn't just expensive furniture and hired staff. Someone who actually gave a damn about children. That's when Rita Santos showed up at my door. Hey friend, before we continue this story, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your city. I absolutely love knowing that people from everywhere are here with us. And if you're feeling this story so far, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this with someone who loves a powerful story. Your support keeps these stories coming. Now let's get back to Matthew's story because things are about to get intense. Rita was 28, straight from Texas with a resume that read like she was applying to be a saint. Foster care experience. Volunteer work at children's hospitals, recommendation letters that made her sound like she could fix broken hearts just by walking into a room. But none of that's what made me hire her on the spot. It was how she looked at the photograph of my triplets sitting on my desk. Most people glanced at it politely and moved on to discuss salary. Rita picked it up and stared at those 3 little faces like she was trying to memorize every detail. Like they already mattered before she'd even met them. Those are Vera, Kenny, and Imelda, I said, pointing to each small face. Rita's smile wasn't the professional kind people wear during job interviews. It was genuine, the kind that reaches your eyes and means something. They're absolutely beautiful. How old are they? 2.5, and I'm about to lose them forever. The words escaped before I could stop them. Raw and desperate and true. Rita didn't look uncomfortable or try to change the subject. She sat down across from me, her hands folded calmly in her lap, and said something I'll never forget. Then we better make absolutely sure that doesn't happen. She started work the next morning. I figured she'd be like all the others, professional, efficient, keep the kids alive and entertained while I handled business calls and put out fires at the company. But Rita was completely different from the first hour. She didn't just supervise the children. She actually saw them as individual people. By the 3rd day, she'd figured out that Vera only ate carrots if they were cut into star shapes. That Kenny couldn't fall asleep without his blue blanket, and if it was being washed, he'd scream for an hour straight. That Imelda was terrified of the vacuum cleaner but loved listening to rain sounds. You notice things nobody else sees, I said one evening, watching her read Imelda a bedtime story with different voices for each character. Rita just shrugged like it was nothing special. Kids tell you everything about themselves if you actually pay attention. Most grown-ups just don't bother listening. The court-appointed social worker arrived on day 5. Mrs. Brennan was around 60 with a face that looked like it had seen every lie a desperate parent could tell. She walked through my penthouse with a clipboard checking boxes, asking questions designed to make me trip over my own words. Rita stayed in the corner with the kids, building block towers, but I could feel her attention on every word being said. "Mr. Vincent, how often do you personally prepare meals for the children?" Mrs. Brennan asked, her pen ready. I froze completely. The honest answer was almost never. The nannies handled meal times because I was usually on conference calls or in meetings or managing some crisis at work. But before I could stumble through some weak explanation, Rita stood up smoothly. "Mr. Vincent makes breakfast every Saturday morning," she said with absolute confidence. "Pancakes shaped like animals. Vera loves elephants, Kenny always wants lions, and Imelda insists on butterflies every single time. The kids talk about it all week long." Mrs. Brennan scribbled something down. I stared at Rita in shock. We had never made pancakes together. She was completely lying. For me. And somehow she made it sound so convincing that even I started to believe it had happened. After Mrs. Brennan left, I pulled Rita into the hallway. "Why would you lie like that?" She looked directly into my eyes without even a hint of guilt. "Because those 3 children need their father, and you need a real chance to prove you can be the father they deserve." "I don't deserve them," I said quietly. "Laura was right about everything. I've been so obsessed with building my company that I completely forgot to build an actual relationship with my own children." Rita's voice suddenly turned sharp and fierce. "Stop that right now. You don't get to give up. Those kids don't need some perfect fantasy father. They need you, the real you. And starting tomorrow morning, we're going to show everyone exactly who that is." She wasn't kidding around. The next morning, Rita woke me up at 6 o'clock. "We're making pancakes," she announced, practically dragging me into the kitchen before I could protest. The triplets sat in their high chairs, watching with huge curious eyes as Rita handed me a mixing bowl and a whisk. "I genuinely don't know how to make pancakes," I admitted. "Then you're going to learn right now. They won't care if they're perfect. They'll care that their dad tried." The pancakes were an absolute disaster. Lumpy batter, burned on one side and raw on the other. But when I set those horrible pancakes in front of Vera, Kenny, and Imelda, they clapped their little hands and giggled like I'd created a masterpiece. Kenny smeared syrup all over his face and hair. Imelda threw a piece at Vera, who laughed so hard she made that adorable snorting sound. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged in the universe. Rita taught me everything from scratch. How to give baths without flooding the entire bathroom. How to read bedtime stories with silly voices that made them laugh. How to recognize the early signs that Imelda was getting tired before she had a complete meltdown. She never did the work for me. She made me do it myself. And slowly, day by day, I stopped feeling like a visitor in my own home. But Laura wasn't finished destroying me. 1 week into the 2-week trial period, she appeared at my building without any warning. Security called from the lobby, and my stomach dropped straight to the floor. Rita was in the playroom with the kids, singing some ridiculous song about a dancing bear. I stood in the doorway watching them, knowing that if Laura took them away, I might never see this moment again. "Stay here with them," I told Rita. "No matter what happens down there, don't let them see me upset." Rita nodded, her jaw clenched tight. "Go handle whatever this is. We'll be right here when you get back." I met Laura in the lobby. She looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Polished, expensive, calculated. Her lawyer stood beside her holding a briefcase that probably cost more than most people earn in a month. "Matthew," Laura said in that fake sweet voice that made my skin crawl, "we need to have a conversation. The custody hearing is in exactly 1 week. We can talk then in front of the judge." Her lawyer stepped forward aggressively. "Mrs. Vincent has serious concerns about the welfare of the children. We'd like to conduct an immediate home visit. Today. Right now." My heart started racing. This was obviously a trap. Laura wanted to see the penthouse, find something, anything she could twist and use against me in court. But legally, I couldn't refuse. The judge had granted both parents the right to check on the children during the trial period. "Fine," I said through clenched teeth. "Let's go upstairs." We rode the elevator in terrible silence. I quickly texted Rita a warning. "Laura's coming up. Be careful what you say." When those elevator doors opened, I expected total chaos. Toys scattered everywhere. Kids screaming and crying. Something Laura could point at and tell the judge I couldn't handle basic parenting. But the penthouse was perfectly calm. Soft music played in the background. The triplets sat at their little table with crayons and coloring books, Rita sitting beside them. Vera looked up when we walked in and her whole face lit up. Dada. Laura's expression tightened. I could practically see the calculations running behind her cold eyes. She'd expected to find disaster, but instead she found an actual home. Rita stood up, brushing crayon dust off her hands. "You must be Laura. I've heard quite a bit about you." Laura's smile could have frozen water. "And who exactly are you?" "Rita Santos. I help Mr. Vincent take care of the children." "Help," Laura repeated, her voice dripping with venom. "So Matthew still isn't actually doing this alone." Rita didn't even blink. Parenting has never been about doing everything alone. It's about showing up consistently for your children. And Mr. Vincent shows up every single day without fail. Laura walked through my penthouse like a detective investigating a crime scene. She inspected the kids' bedroom, the kitchen, even the bathroom. Her lawyer took detailed notes on everything. I held my breath, waiting for her to discover something she could weaponize, but there was absolutely nothing. The beds were perfectly made. The toys were organized neatly. The refrigerator was stocked with healthy, organic food. Rita had made sure every detail was flawless. Before they left, Laura crouched down in front of the triplets. "Mommy will see you very, very soon," she said in that sugary fake voice. Vera looked confused. Kenny clutched his blue blanket tighter against his chest. Imelda actually hid behind Rita's legs. They didn't recognize Laura. To them, she was just a strange woman pretending to care about them. After they finally left, I collapsed onto the couch with my hands shaking. She's going to twist this somehow. I know she will. She always finds a way. Rita sat down beside me. "Let her try whatever she wants. We're not giving up on those kids." That night after the triplets were asleep, Rita made tea and we sat together on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Lowe's angels stretched out below us like a blanket of fallen stars. "Why are you really doing this?" I asked her. "You could work for anyone, easier families, way better pay. Why stay here?" Rita was quiet for a long time, staring out at the city. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "When I was 7 years old, my mom got cancer. My dad worked 3 jobs at once trying to pay the medical bills, and we had this neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who looked after me every day. She didn't have to do it. We couldn't pay her anything, but she made sure I had dinner every single night. She helped me with my homework. She tucked me into bed when my dad was working the late shift. When my mom died, Mrs. Chen held me while I cried for hours. She showed me something important, that love isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes love is just showing up, being there when it matters. I stayed here because those 3 kids need someone to show up, and so do you." I didn't know what to say to that. My whole life, I'd believed that real success meant doing everything yourself, building an empire with your own 2 hands and never asking for help. But sitting there with Rita under the stars, I finally understood something. The strongest people aren't the ones who do everything alone. They're the ones who are brave enough to let others help carry the weight. The next few days blurred together into a beautiful routine. Rita and I worked as a team. Mornings meant pancakes and playtime on the living room floor. Afternoons were trips to the park or the aquarium. Evenings were bath time, story time, and lullabies sung off-key. I started leaving work early every single day. I turned off my phone completely during dinner. I learned the names of all the triplets' favorite stuffed animals. And gradually, something fundamental shifted. Vera started running to me first when she got scared. Kenny wanted me to push him on the swings at the park. Imelda fell asleep holding my hand every night. I wasn't just their father on paper anymore. I was becoming their father in all the ways that actually mattered. The custody hearing was scheduled for Monday morning at 9 o'clock. The Sunday before, Rita spent the entire day preparing me like I was studying for the most important test of my life. She quizzed me on routines, favorite foods, allergies, medical history, everything a real father should know by heart. By evening, I felt ready. Terrified, but ready. "You've got this completely," Rita said, her hand firm on my shoulder. "Just tell the truth. Show them the man you've become." But that night, everything completely fell apart. I woke up at 2 in the morning to Imelda screaming. Not the normal cry of a toddler who had a nightmare. This was different, desperate, terrified, wrong. I ran to the kid's room and found her burning with fever, her little body so hot it scared me. Rita was already there, pressing a cool cloth to Imelda's forehead with shaking hands. "We need to get her to a hospital right now," Rita said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. I scooped Imelda into my arms, feeling her tiny body trembling against my chest. Vera and Kenny woke up crying, confused and frightened by all the commotion. Rita grabbed them both, whispering soft reassurances while I called for my driver. The ride to the hospital was the longest 15 minutes of my entire life. Imelda whimpered weakly against my shoulder, and I kept whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "You're going to be okay, baby girl. Daddy's right here. I'm not going anywhere. I promise." At the hospital, they took Imelda back immediately behind those scary double doors. "Possible meningitis," the doctor said with a serious face. They needed to run extensive tests right away. I stood in that sterile waiting room feeling completely helpless and hollow inside. Rita sat with Vera and Kenny, reading them stories from a book she'd somehow remembered to grab on our way out, keeping them calm and distracted even though I could see the deep worry in her own eyes. If you've made it to this point of the story, just hit that subscribe button and like button. I love you so much. Hours crawled by like years. Dawn broke outside the windows, painting the sky pink and gold. My phone kept buzzing with urgent messages from my lawyer. The custody hearing was in exactly 4 hours. I needed to be there, showered, dressed properly, prepared to fight, but I couldn't leave Imelda, not right now, not when she needed me more than she'd ever needed anyone. Rita walked over with Vera asleep in her arms and Kenny holding her hand. "Go home right now," she said quietly but firmly. "Shower, change clothes, get to that hearing. I can't leave her here alone. Imelda needs you to win today, Matthew. If you lose custody, Laura will take all 3 of them away. You won't be here for any of them when they're sick or scared or need their father. I'll stay with Imelda. I promise I won't leave her side for 1 second. Rita, I can't." "Matthew," she looked at me with those steady, certain eyes that had guided me through everything. "Trust me, you've learned how to be their father. Now go fight for the right to keep being their father." I went home in a daze, showered mechanically, put on a suit that felt like armor I didn't deserve to wear. My lawyer met me at the courthouse steps with a thick folder full of evidence, but all I could think about was Imelda in that hospital bed, so small and vulnerable and scared. The courtroom felt cold and hostile. Laura sat on the opposite side with her entire legal team, looking confident and perfectly composed like she'd already won. The judge entered with her black robe flowing, and the hearing officially began. Laura's lawyer went first, painting me as a wealthy man who'd simply hired someone to fix his parenting problems instead of actually fixing himself. They showed photographs of Rita playing with the kids while I worked. They presented emails I'd sent at midnight and 2 in the morning. security footage of nannies putting the triplets to bed, while I stayed locked in my home office. Every single piece of evidence made me look like a complete stranger living in the same house as my children. Then it was finally my turn. My lawyer presented our evidence methodically. Photos of me at the park with the triplets, official testimony from Mrs. Brennan about the dramatic improvements in the home environment, a detailed schedule showing how I'd cut my work hours nearly in half. But I could see it in the judge's eyes. She wasn't fully convinced yet. She'd heard these kinds of promises from absent wealthy parents 1,000 times before. "Mr. Vincent," the judge said, leaning forward seriously, "I've seen many wealthy parents attempt to win custody by simply throwing resources at the problem, hearing the best nannies money can buy, the best lawyers in the city. But what I need to understand is this. Are you truly present in these children's actual lives, or are you just managing them like another business acquisition?" I stood up without thinking. My lawyer touched my arm lightly, a silent warning to be careful, but I didn't care about legal strategy anymore. I just needed to tell the complete truth. "Your Honor, 2 weeks ago, I didn't know that my daughter Imelda was terrified of the vacuum cleaner. I didn't know that my son Kenny needed his specific blue blanket to fall asleep. I didn't know that my daughter Vera only eats carrots if they're cut into star shapes. I was so completely obsessed with building a billion-dollar company that I forgot to build an actual relationship with my own children. And that failure is entirely on me. But I'm not that man anymore. Because someone showed me that being a good father isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about showing up consistently. And I have shown up every single day since this trial started. I make them breakfast every morning. I read them bedtime stories with silly voices. I hold them when they're scared or sad. And last night, when my daughter Imelda got dangerously sick, I carried her to the hospital myself, and I stayed with her until I knew she was going to be safe. I'm not standing here asking you to believe I'm a perfect father. I'm asking you to believe that I'm trying with everything I have. And I will keep trying every single day for the rest of my life, because those 3 kids are absolutely everything to me." The courtroom went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The judge wrote something down on her notepad, her expression impossible to read. Then she looked up at both sides. "I'm calling a recess. We'll reconvene in exactly 2 hours." I walked out of that courtroom with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. My lawyer tried to talk strategy with me, analyzing what had just happened, but I couldn't hear any of it. I just needed to get back to Imelda immediately. I drove to the hospital still wearing my suit and found Rita sitting in Imelda's room looking exhausted. My little girl was awake now, still pale but smiling weakly, a small IV taped to her tiny arm. "Dada," she said in the sweetest voice I'd ever heard. I sat down beside her hospital bed and took her little hand in mine. "I'm right here, sweetheart. Daddy's here and I'm not going anywhere." Rita stood in the corner looking completely exhausted but deeply relieved. The doctor said it wasn't meningitis after all, just a really severe virus. She's going to be completely okay. I closed my eyes and let the relief wash over me like a wave. Imelda squeezed my hand with her tiny fingers, and in that exact moment I knew something with absolute certainty. Win or lose today, I was already her father. Not because a judge signed some legal document, because I had chosen to be, because I had shown up when it mattered most. 2 hours later, I was back in that cold courtroom. The judge returned to her bench, her face serious and unreadable. "I've reached my decision," she said formally. "Mr. Vincent, I've carefully reviewed all the evidence presented, and I have seen genuine change. Not just surface-level adjustments or temporary improvements, but real effort to prioritize your children's well-being. However," my heart stopped beating, that word, however. "However, I'm also acutely aware that Ms. Santos has been instrumental in facilitating this transformation. And while I genuinely applaud her dedication, I need concrete assurance that you can maintain this level of parental care without relying primarily on hired help." Before I could even begin to respond, the courtroom doors suddenly burst open. Rita walked in, still wearing the exact same clothes from the hospital, Imelda cradled carefully in her arms. Vera and Kenny toddled beside her, each holding one of Rita's hands. The judge looked genuinely startled. My lawyer stood up to object to this interruption, but Rita spoke first with absolute conviction. "Your Honor, I sincerely apologize for this interruption. My name is Rita Santos. I'm the maid Mr. Vincent hired exactly 2 weeks ago." She walked forward confidently, Imelda resting peacefully against her shoulder. "I need to say something, and it absolutely cannot wait another second. I've worked for many different families over the years. Rich ones, poor ones, broken ones trying to heal. And I can tell you without a single doubt that Matthew Vincent is a genuinely good father. Not because he's perfect or has all the answers, but because he's real and he tries. Last night, Imelda got dangerously sick. Mr. Vincent could have easily sent me to the hospital alone so he could prepare for today's hearing. His entire future was literally on the line, everything he's built. But he didn't hesitate for even 1 second. He held his daughter. He stayed with her all night. He chose her over everything else in his life. That's exactly what a real parent does. And these 3 children don't need some fantasy of a perfect home. They need him. They need their father." Rita walked over and gently handed Imelda to me. My daughter immediately wrapped her small arms around my neck and held on tight. Vera and Kenny climbed up onto my lap, and I held all 3 of them at once, feeling their warmth, their absolute trust, their unconditional love filling every broken part of me. The judge watched us for what felt like an eternity. Then she spoke, and her voice was different somehow, softer. "Ms. Santos, your testimony is noted and deeply appreciated. And Mr. Vincent, I have seen more than enough evidence. Full custody is hereby awarded to you, permanent custody. Ms. Laura Vincent will be granted supervised visitation rights only, pending a thorough review in 6 months. This court is now adjourned." The gavel struck the wooden block, and I couldn't breathe properly. I'd won. They were mine, actually mine. I looked at Rita standing there with tears streaming down her face, and I realized something I probably should have understood weeks ago. She hadn't just saved my legal case. She had saved my entire family, and maybe, just maybe, she had saved me too. We left the courthouse together as the sun was setting. The triplets were completely exhausted, falling asleep one by one in the car on the ride home. Rita sat beside me in the back seat, quiet and thoughtful, staring out the window at the city lights. "Thank you," I said, and the words felt completely inadequate. "For everything you've done. I don't know how I could ever possibly repay you." Rita shook her head gently. "You don't owe me anything, Matthew. This was always entirely about them." "Stay with us," I said suddenly, the words bursting out before I could overthink them. "Don't just be their maid anymore. Be part of our actual family. We need you. I need you." Rita smiled, but it was sad somehow. "Matthew, you don't need me anymore. You've finally figured out how to be their father. That was always the whole point of this. Maybe I don't need you as a maid or an employee, but we need you as Rita, the woman who showed up when absolutely no one else did, the woman who believed in us when I didn't even believe in myself. Please, stay." Rita looked at the triplets sleeping peacefully, then back at me with those warm, caring eyes. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll stay." That was 6 months ago. Rita didn't stay as a maid or an employee. She stayed as family. The kids call her Aunt Rita now, and their faces light up whenever she walks into a room. She lives in the guest room and fills our penthouse with constant laughter and music, and the kind of genuine warmth that no amount of money can ever buy. Laura gets her supervised visits every other weekend, but the triplets barely remember her anymore. They know exactly who was there when it really mattered. And me, I'm not even close to the same man I was 6 months ago. I still run my company and make business decisions, but it doesn't control my life anymore. I leave work at 5 o'clock every single day without exception. I'm there for dinner, for bath time, for bedtime stories with silly voices. I know every tiny detail of my children's lives because I'm actually living it with them every moment. Sometimes late at night when the kids are asleep, Rita and I sit together on the balcony and just talk about life, about what truly matters, about how sometimes the people who save us are the ones we almost didn't let into our lives. I don't know exactly what the future holds for any of us, but I know that whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Because real family isn't just about blood or legal documents. It's about the people who show up consistently, who stay through the hard times, who love you even when you don't deserve it. Rita taught me that truth, and I'll spend the rest of my life making absolutely sure my kids understand it too. 10 moral lessons from this story are: 1. Real parenting is about showing up consistently, not being perfect. Children don't need flawless parents. They need present ones who genuinely try every single day. 2. Success means absolutely nothing if you sacrifice the relationships that truly matter. Money and career achievements become hollow and meaningless without real love and deep connection. 3. Sometimes the people who change our lives completely are the ones we almost overlooked. Don't judge others by their position or social status. Everyone has incredible value to offer. 4. True strength comes from asking for help, not doing everything alone. Vulnerability and accepting genuine support are signs of wisdom, not weakness. 5. Actions speak infinitely louder than words, especially to children. What you do consistently every day matters far more than what you promise to do someday. 6. Family is defined by love and commitment, not just biology or legal documents. The people who stay through real hardship earn their place in your heart forever. 7. Redemption is always possible when you genuinely change your behavior. Past mistakes don't define your future if you're truly willing to grow and do better. 8. Pay close attention to the small details in the lives of those you love. Knowing someone's fears, preferences, and needs proves you truly care about them. 9. Kindness and showing up for others creates powerful ripples that return to you. The good you put into the world often comes back exactly when you need it most. 10. Never underestimate the transformative power of one person who believes in you. Sometimes all we need is someone who sees our potential and absolutely refuses to give up on us. If this story touched your heart in any way, do me a huge favor right now. Hit that like button hard. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss powerful stories like this one. Share this video with someone in your life who needs to hear it today. And drop a comment below telling me what you took away from Matthew and Rita's journey. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who desperately need hope, and I appreciate every single one of you more than you know. Thank you so much for being here with me today.